Good morning and welcome to Ag Talking to Raw Sunday edition. Just got back from the mushroom barn, ate some food, drank a cup of coffee because I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning. It is now somewhere around a little after 11. I got a lot of questions again. Thank you. I love the questions, so keep them coming. There's 137 comments in this on Wednesday's video. As you know, I will not be able to get to all of them, but I will get to as many as I can in a 25-minute period, so stay tuned for that. Okay. What do I think of robotic milking? I'm just going to kind of bounce around here. Robotic milking takes out the human element, which is good in a way and bad in a way. The good parts about robotic milking is that the cow is properly cleaned because that machine isn't grossed out by a really shitty udder coming into the parlor. But the human element is there's nobody handling those cows. You're around them, but there's no personal contact with the animals at that point. So the only thing that animal sees you doing is coming with a needle for vaccinations. And of course, if you're watching your computer, it tells you which one may or may not have high somatic cell, and you're going to be hitting them with penicillin and other things. So every time that animal sees you, it's going to want to run like a son of a gun to get away from you. How many cows did I milk? At the peak was 88 cows. Towards the end, we were only milking maybe 30 cows, just because I didn't want to do it anymore. It was just a waste of my time. I was more into the making money over wasting time and money. So yeah, that was it. We used to switch them out. You know, a 60 cow barn, we'd switch them out. So at one point, we were switching out 28 cows. I remember that. That was right after I got out of high school. Things were doing pretty good then. We actually made decent money at it at that point. After my grandfather passed away in '92, on my mother's side, my uncle, he farmed over there. And somewhere around 96, 97, milk price had hit an all-time high, and I was seriously considering going and renting that barn and milking cows. But I'm glad I talked myself out of it. Okay. Hey Wes, I don't know if you have a chance to read my questions, but did you ever think about buying a teleporter for loader work? Teleporter? Hell yeah. If I could get my hands on a teleporter, I'd be teleporting my ass all over the world, let alone hay bales. I think you're saying telehandler. Telehandlers, they're great. I just don't think that I need a well-rounded implement, or tractor. Because if I put a loader on the 8120, I can take the loader off the 8120. If I put, and I can do stuff with it. Telehandler is just a loader. I don't want to be driving a telehandler to the field and then still have a tractor at the hay pile or whatever to load this hay. So, yeah, no, it just doesn't work for me right now. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. So, let's see. My dad always says there's a right way, the wrong way, and his way. I agree with that. Me and my father actually had that conversation about 2 days ago. That I said to him, I says, well, there's better ways to do things, and if you think that your way is better than mine, go ahead and show me, and then I'll tell you you're wrong because it's not. That's at least here at this farm. And Timothy tries some new things, and I've already tried them. I know, not always, and that sounds kind of arrogant of me to say that I've tried every single way to change the oil on a tractor, but there's really pretty much just one way of doing it. Sitting there with the engine oil pan open in a shop for, say, an afternoon waiting for those 4 drips of oil to come out, that's the wrong way to do it. Drain that freaking oil, put that cap on there, put the new fresh oil and filter on there, and go to work. That little bit of leftover oil means nothing in that engine. There's more oil in the head of that motor than there is in the pan, and it doesn't matter. Okay, dang Wes, you scare the kids bad enough in low light. Thank you. I'm glad. I don't know what that was in reference to, but a few county governments in North Dakota still cloud seed. I would like to see that. If Ethan Johnson, if you can show me that on film, I would agree that it's still happening, but I was told that it was so uneconomical. Maybe for forest fires and stuff, you might get away with it, but I don't know. I have no idea about that. All right, so those that can do and them that can't teach. John, Farming Life Australia. Yeah, I said that to a gym teacher one time. It says, those who can do, those who can't teach. Those who can't teach, teach phys ed. I got ejected from the class pretty quickly. Yeah, Mr. Williver. Yep, Williver. All right, so yeah, there are some really good questions in here, and I was looking for the some of them. This one is, what is the first tractor that I ever drove? The first tractor I ever drove, I own it now. It was that 1940 9N Ford. That was my uncle's, and you can look back in the videos on One Lonely Farmer channel to see that. So they're back in 2010, I think. So it's been a few years ago. Which mulch hay prices per ton? Well, that just depends on who you are. If you just went out and bought a baler and baled up the shit that most people do that are new in the business, you're probably not even going to be able to market that stuff. So it ranges anywhere from $45 a ton to $110 a ton. And I know there's some people that are paying $110 a ton. I do not sell to them, though, because there's a reason they're paying $110 a ton. Wes, would you ever do a meet and greet like How Farms Work does at a farm show? And when do you think your plow day will happen? Well, the plow day is a long time off. I've been putting a lot of thought into it. I know where it's going to be held at. I'm just not sure how soon that will happen. It will happen. Whether it's in a year, whether it's in 3 years, I'm not sure. But when it does happen, anybody that comes will have a good time. It's just the way it's going to be. Everybody's going to have a good time. It'll be, you can bring your own tractor. If you don't have a tractor, you can bring a plow. If you don't have a plow, I'm sure someone will allow you to use their tractor and plow or let you ride along on a fender or in a cab. That's just how open and friendly my subscribers are, unless you are some kind of an asshole that has a sick fetish with me, which a lot of people do. So, anyway, why can't dairy farmers haul their own milk? Economically, it is very difficult to haul our own milk in New Jersey. By the time you buy the truck, by the time you pay the insurance, and by the time you go through the process of being able to haul into a creamery, we didn't produce enough milk. So that's why we didn't do it. Yeah, well, this is from Cone H. Hello, Wes. Great talks. It's interesting to hear how farming works in the U.S. We switched of feeding company because of urea in feeds. Our farm is based in the Netherlands, and they were suggesting a lot of urea in a grass-based ration, and it did not work. We had a lot of problems with rumen acidation because of that. Yes, urea, you really, really, really have to have an agronomist, or not an agronomist, but a nutritionalist. I got to get the right words. I'm going to be, thrown off the internet for that. But a nutritionist to come out and test what you're feeding before they can recommend urea. Urea it can fuck you up, at least your animals. So, banksters and climate manipulators make you, then break you, and take all your assets for pennies on the dollar. Ignorance isn't bliss, it's dangerous. IMHO. Okay, that was a really good statement, because a bank will lend you more money than you can afford to pay back. They will, and if you can't pay it back, then they're like, well, we can extend it, and if we do extend it, we'll give you more money, and that'll get the creditors off your back. Now the problem is, if you're borrowing money like that, you're already fiscally irresponsible. And bankers can smell that. They're like, oh, okay. As long as your assets that you have exceed what they lend you, by a small margin, by the way, they'll just keep handing it to you. So you have to know where and when to stop borrowing money from these people. It's just economics. I mean, if you're on a sinking ship, are you going to what? Stay on board or get on the little dinghy and float away? Sometimes you got to tuck your tail between your legs and do without some stuff. You know, that's really hard for some people, especially some people that have to keep up with the Joneses. And when I say that, I mean they look across the fence row and they see their neighbors who possibly has a wife that's a lawyer or a doctor or a husband, you know, or they both work and they have off-farm jobs, or there's a huge trust fund somewhere and that new equipment just keeps coming in. I have none of those, by the way, just so you know. Okay, the thing with a small farmer and a large farmer is simple. And I read this the other day and I thought it was just brilliant. And it's true. If the small farmer borrows $1 million, he has a problem, not the bank. If a larger farmer borrows $100 million, the bank has a problem because they can't just put him out. They will lose too much money. The head in the bank will roll. Heads in the bank will roll. You got to understand some of these people are not from the United States, but it's hard to understand their typing. But anyways, that is the truth. I mean, a small farmer here in New Jersey, a small farmer gets $30,000 loans all day long. They go out, they get 30 grand. It takes next to nothing because their pickup truck, you know, they put up their pickup truck and a little bit of mortgage on their house or a couple of pieces of equipment if they don't even own a house. You can get $30,000. They will take that stuff away from you. But when you get a guy that's, you know, got a few hundred acres of land and he's got $1 million or $2 million worth of equipment or assets, then they will lend a lot more than that, and they won't put them out of business. You get put on a payment plan, and it's crazy. It is crazy. I've seen it happen. Hold on a second. I got to read some of these things. Idea for a mini-series. This time in farming, you pick a date, time in the farm career. You can list what the farm's main production was and what equipment was now or being the main workhorse, what buildings were there or not, would give a good view of how your farm has changed. Okay, so what this question is asking what we did in the past, what we did, you know, what my great-grandparents did, what my grandparents did, what my parents did, and what I'm doing, how it has changed. Well, I could tell you in a short sentence that the farm has changed dramatically in the last 20 years. Before that, my great-grandfather, my great-grandparents were Hungarian immigrants, or immigrated from the Czech lands of the Austria-Hungarian Empire. If anybody knows anything about that, the Czech lands, I believe, is now Poland, but they weren't Polish. They were Irish, English, Scottish descent. Ellis was my great-grandmother's last name, maiden name, and Pandy is actually a Roman name or an English Welsh name from the England. And when I did the 23andMe, it kind of proved that. There is also German and French in me that I do not believe is in my father, is because it comes from my mother's side. And the name Pouch is supposedly German. And so, yeah, that's where that comes. German-French descendants. So, yeah, what they're asking is what we did and how we did it. Well, when my great-grandparents owned the farm, they did a lot of poultry, a lot of whiskey. Yes, whiskey. That was back in the Prohibition days. And they had a still, and when my grandparents dug up the porch to do a new addition onto the house and fix the house all up, they found the still. My grandfather didn't know where his father had put the still, but he mashed it up and put it under the porch, poured concrete on it. So, and it is still there. They decided that it was there, so they left it there. So, under the porch in my grandmother's house, there is a still. It is all smashed up, no longer functional. So they did that. My grandparents, they milked cows. They also, I don't know, I don't think they did poultry at all. I did the chickens. When I was a kid, I had chickens, and then I went to rabbits after I got married. Made good money in the rabbits. The chickens, wasn't hurting for money, let's put it that way. But yeah, once the mulch hay business took off, everything else went to the wayside, and in 2014 was the last I grew corn and beans because of the deer problem that we have. So now we're just a mulch hay production, into mulch hay production. What's my opinion on the turf industry? Well, it's a perfectly good way to allow someone else to strip off your topsoil. And once they strip that topsoil off, your land is worthless. It's worthless to everyone. And they will deny that there is a strip off of the topsoil. But I often wondered what that brown stuff was on the bottom of the sod. I really did. Up here in the Great Meadows, New Jersey, there was a farm that they had rented their land for 50 years. 50 years to a sod farm. They stripped off all of that peat, or that really, that peat. It's peat up there. Stripped it all off, and then one year they just said, well, we don't want to rent your ground anymore. They had stripped over 5 feet of topsoil off of that ground. And the family was suing them, is now suing that sod farm because there's no topsoil. They can't rent the ground. There's nothing there. And there was never any contract for the removal of topsoil. And, every sod farmer will tell you this. There's a guy right up the road here. He'll tell you there's no dirt comes off of that sod. We put more in the ground than we take out. It's impossible. When you're stripping a half an inch of soil, you're stripping a half an inch of soil. The erosion rate of topsoil is a dime thickness a year. If you're not holding it together. So, sod farmers, they're sod farmers. They're no better than loggers, if you ask me. And not good loggers, but the loggers in New Jersey are nothing but a bunch of thieves. So, let's see. Wes, what you described in those cows was a classic case of bloat. Had it happened when I was younger, cows being cows, they will eat till they die. That is true. You might have been able to save them. To treat bloat, if you tie a stick in their mouth, they will chew on the stick and work the stick with their tongue, and gas will be belched back up, relieving the pressure of the stomachs. Okay. All right. So here's the thing. They're talking about that urea deal. All right. So that woman, this neighbor down here that lost those 5 cows, what I would have done and what I have done with our cows with a classic case of bloat, I had an aluminum pipe. It was about, 2.5 feet long. You'd run that aluminum pipe right down along the side and into their throat, and then you would pass a milker hose through there. The aluminum pipe was just to keep the cow from pinching off the hose. And and the other thing is you had to have a ball. It was, if you did it wrong, you'd put the damn thing in their lungs, and that was no good. But you had to, you blew into the end of it, and then you'd smell it. And when you got into the stomach, if you pulled it in and out a couple times, if you weren't sure where it was going, you could smell when it got into the stomach. What a horrible smell. But, yeah, and that would leave the gas out. She would not allow me to do this. She told me that she would just call a vet. They died. That's just a left-wing nut that doesn't know anything about animals telling someone who has lived with and around animals all their lives that he was a fucking moron. And this moron never lost a cow to bloat. Because I learned from my father, and he learned from his father, and his father learned from his father. Just stick a pipe down their throat with a hose. Boom, boom. Lets the air out. I never heard of the stick thing. That's a good idea, but I bet it does work. I'll bet you anything it does work. Woo, look at the bright side. Yeah. Let's see. How about the 4960 that broke 7 months ago? Has it been that long? Has it really been that long? It's going to be repaired. As always, say when you have someone blow smoke, you get rectal cancer. Well, I guess maybe. What are my thoughts on autonomous tractors? Not in New Jersey. Too many dumbasses. They would see that thing and be like, and run into it. Yeah, it just wouldn't work here. I have no need for an autonomous tractor. I mean, basically, the tractors with the auto steer and stuff, that's autonomous enough. You still have to have that human element. I think they need to set up alarms, fence row alarms, so that they wake them up at the end of the field, because some of them are so comfortable that you fall asleep. Okay, here's one of the questions that I really wanted to answer. So if a person wants to become a farmer, but no farmer will want to train them, then what is a person to do? Well, you have to be a likable individual. For the most part, farmers don't mind sharing information. They don't mind taking on an apprentice. I personally have had people come to the farm, and I've had them work for me. They're not worth their weight in salt. But if you're really serious in learning how to be a farmer, be persistent, be friendly. Don't get upset when they tell you that you're just a stupid kid and get out. But if you're not a friendly person and you come off as an asshole, no, find another career. That's it. Take ag courses and be the agronomist, you know. And there was one of these questions on here, and I can't seem to find it, but they were talking about how farms work. And Ryan and Travis and Dwight and them, Beth, you know, they use agronomists to test their soil to come up with the best plan for growing row crops. Okay, I could pay an agronomist to do that too, but I have my own soil probe. Okay, so I go out and I take soil tests. I have pulled leaf samples and sent them away when I was younger. I never had to pay somebody to do that. When you start pulling soil tests, like I pulled soil tests this spring. Actually, Timothy and Dad did. I think they did that while I was in the Philippines. Pulled soil tests, I need lime. Pequea has given me that lime spreader to use. I have not been able to get anybody to bring me lime. It's really kind of pissing me off. But I do need lime, a little bit of lime. I don't need a lot of lime, just a little bit of lime. And if you know anything about putting down lime, half a ton to the acre anything more than that, you're over applying. You do better with a half a ton to the acre for 5 years than you do with a ton and a half to the acre once, because it'll erode away. It doesn't do what you think it would do. In that case, more is not better with lime. So what I deal with when I pull these soil tests is I go to the fertilizer plant. Nice guy up the road there, Rick Clevier. He works at the FS Growmark, and he says, "Hey Wes, this is what you got to do." It's that simple. I don't pay him anything. I buy the products from him, and that's how that goes. So to pay somebody else to come out and tell me that I need to put, whatever, it's to each their own. If you aren't confident enough, and I'm not saying that those guys aren't confident, it's just easier for some farmers to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to pay this guy. He's going to go out and he's going to take the soil test. He's not going to be biased in his soil test patterns, because some guys, and some farmers, and they think this is the right thing to do, and it really isn't. They'll just take soil tests from certain parts of the field because, there's areas on farms that are just so bad, you don't even want to go on to them. And that's going to bring down the rest of the farm. In fact, if you only sampled the bad areas, it may benefit the whole farm. But now with agronomists, even FS Growmark up here, they have a machine that's basically a toolbar, and they drive it on a pickup truck and they pull samples across the field. So there's a grid pattern, and every so many feet there is a sample pulled across the whole entire field, which gives you a map. And I think How Farms Work did that. I think they did that a couple of years ago. They mapped everything out and got everything where they needed it to be. And then you can use your GPS. I mean, there's so many different ways to improve your yield without increasing acreage. The old thought process was, well, I want to grow more corn. Well, if I use 400 pounds of 28-13-13 or 26-13-13-2 on all my corn ground, and I just pick up another 100 acres, and I do the same thing there, I'll increase my yield. Well, your rent is there, your seed costs, your fertilizer costs, and everything else. But now with the new technologies and the new thought processes of how to produce grain more evenly over the same size fields, you don't need that 100 acres. You really, truly do not need that extra 100 acres. What you need to do is manage your farms better to produce a more even range of yield. Yes, CEC levels change in a field. The pH change in a field, and so does the fertilizer level. Your fertility changes throughout a field. So if you can map that out the way that we're doing it now and apply according to those maps, you can actually leave that 100 acres off to the side. You don't need it. Let somebody else do the old-fashioned way and create a higher yield. Your rent is not going to increase at all on that ground because you haven't increased your acres. Your fertilizer costs are probably going to be a little less than if you'd just rented the extra 100 acres of ground. And your equipment costs will be lower because you're not running over another 100 acres of ground. Your fuel costs are going to be less. Everything will be less. So you have to take that into account when you're mapping out the fields. Agronomists are great, don't get me wrong. They will show you how to do this stuff. Or you could just open up the latest version of, Ag Today or the Farm Journal or the Pennsylvania Farmer and do some reading and then evaluate what they're doing and say, hey, that could possibly work on my farm. I'm going to do that. So instead of trying to get the bigger, the better, the badder, just concentrate on what you got. And then when you got that hammered out and things are going really well, then go get that 100 acres of ground because you're going to do the same thing to them. But make sure you got a rock solid lease for like 10 years on it the lease needs to be flexible with the grain price. And that's something that a lot of guys have forgotten about. It's like $7 corn. I can pay $250 an acre for this ground. Well, you can pay $250 an acre for that ground with $7 corn. But what about right now when it's $1.75 or $2.75 a bushel? You're going to pay $2.50 for $2.75 a bushel corn. You're going broke. You're going broke fast. So you really have to have those in those contracts. Like, hey, you know what? We're gonna pay rent according to the on a percentage of what grain is selling for because I don't want to go bankrupt. I want to have a good working relationship with property owners. I just don't want to go bankrupt to do that. So anyways, I got 27 minutes in. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out One Lonely Farmer. That's me, just doing different things. Oh, excuse me. Different things on the farm. And keep sending in those questions and comments because I love to read them. If you're an asshole and you want to put asshole comments on there, you can do that too. I'll read them out loud for everybody to see and hear because guess what? They will see and hear that you're an asshole too. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please comment, rate, and subscribe. See you on Wednesday.